There's a lot of companies out there that would consider themselves really, really safe. You go on their websites and they just scream safety. And they're not bringing that safety to the most dangerous work zone that their people will ever be in, which is the roadways.
I think for most of our listeners, they're going to think fleet management, like I don't have semi trucks, I don't have 20 trucks.
One vehicle is a fleet. We have one-man operations. It's so critical for him to follow all the best fleet management practices, because if he doesn't, that one asset that he has could cost him a week's business.
What are some of the practices of fleet management?
Specking out vehicles, caring for that vehicle throughout its life, projecting and predicting the life of the asset, then whoever's operating the vehicle, human capital part of the job, then at the end of the vehicle's life, being able to remarket it in some way.
You just expanded my understanding to 4 from 1. I never thought about that.
What are the things that they miss on the selection process, and what are those mistakes?
The first and foremost is
expert advice, practical tips, real-life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Martin, what was your first truck? You're a truck guy.
Yeah.
What was your first
It
truck?
was a 1950 2.5 ton flatbed truck that I bought for, I don't remember, like $20. And my buddy and I started hauling. Well, now this is a long time ago. No, it was before. It was older than 19. Anyway, it was older than that.
You weren't
And
16 in 1950, were you?
I was -2 in 1950.
Oh, it was a 1950 truck. Okay, what year was this?
Yeah, 69, 68.
Okay, so this was
69.
an old truck back then.
Yeah, it was an old truck.
Okay.
And it had what I found to be a nut loose in the rear end differential. So we'd be driving along. We would haul junk. That's a buddy of mine bought the truck. We were going to haul junk. And that's what we were doing. And you'd be going along about 15 miles an hour and you just lock up. And you had to put it in reverse, and whatever it was, I mean, I think of it as being a nut off a bolt, would fall out from between the gears, and then we could go again. And finally, the engine blew up, and we were at the dump. Unloaded, and it wouldn't start. And I looked down, and water was pouring out the side of the block. So we just pushed further into the dump and walked away.
There you go.
So there was my
We
first
hauled
truck.
dump, including ourselves.
I love it.
That was my method of fleet management. It was like $5 a load or something, which was a fortune. We'd empty a house.
We've never done an episode on fleet management, and I think this will be a really, really fun one. Erin, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. So how long have you been in fleet management? Let's start with that.
I'll date myself, but I've been in the fleet industry for 21 years.
Okay.
But I grew up in retail management and then supply chain, logistics, distribution before I got into fleet. So kind of in automotive in some way or another for a long time.
Excellent. Well, let's just start with the basic question for our audience. I think they understand what fleet management is, but how would you define fleet management? I'm sure it's maybe a little even different and entails more than most of our audience is even thinking.
Yeah. So, I mean, when kids at schools or people that I know are on the street just say, hey, what is fleet? And I just say, think about any organization that needs to use any sort of vehicle or asset to do anything, right? So I don't care if you need fork trucks to do the work, that's a fleet. If you need, but you think about the way people traditionally think about fleet management is managing vehicle assets that are out on the roads, doing some sort of business of moving people, moving products, or getting people to, mobile service jobs. So, all I have to do is I throw out logos, right? And then people are like, oh, I see their trucks on the road all the time. That's a fleet. So it's this idea of a cradle to grave management of a vehicle. And the ultimate goal, I think, for successful fleet management is safety first, and then efficiency, and then sort of everything else falls under one of those two things. And now more than ever, sustainability, which is one of my biggest passions. So.
Okay, very interesting. So I think for most of our listeners, they're going to think fleet management, like I don't have semi trucks, I don't have 20 trucks, but like, I mean, fleet management, do you just need one vehicle to be considered, hey, I need some fleet management, or what is this? Give us like the starting point, entry point.
Sure. I mean, one vehicle is a fleet.
Yeah.
We have one-man operations. Actually, I was on a podcast recently, and one of the gentleman who was interviewing me, he is a one-man show and does pest management, right? And he has one truck and it's just him. And he was we were talking about a lot of different things, and he just shared that um, it's so critical for him to follow all the best fleet management practices, because if he doesn't, that one asset that he has, that's his livelihood, um, could cost him a week's business if he hasn't, cared for that asset properly and keeps it on the road and does all the things, or if he drives erratically and gets in an accident, whatever the case may be, he's out of business. So one vehicle or 20,000, a fleet's a fleet. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think even more so in that example, I mean, likely if you're the owner of the company, the pest management company, you probably are going to take care of that truck that's in your fleet, because you realize very clearly that it's your livelihood. It's really the employee that I worry about, taking as much care and responsibility for your fleet. So yeah, I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit. So
Sure.
you mentioned practices. What are some of the practices of fleet management?
Yeah. So if you start at sort of the beginning, fleet managers they're not all responsible for everything under fleet management, but some are. So if you think about sort of the beginning of this process, it's what type of vehicles do we need as an organization to do the kind of work that we do? So it's specking out vehicles and identifying the best vehicle fit and function wise, life cycle and efficiency wise. So it's what vehicle do I need to use? So it's that selection process. And then it's caring for that vehicle throughout its life and sort of projecting and predicting the life of the asset based on how you're going to use it. And then as you use it, you learn as you go, right? So you're looking at fueling behaviors, maintenance that you're doing or not doing on the vehicle. And then you start to get to know the life cycle of the asset a little bit more and get better and better at predicting its life, and then caring for it throughout. And then whoever's operating the vehicle, that's a big component of fleet management, is that human capital part of the job. And then at the end of the vehicle's life, being able to remarket it in some way. And in my mind, not to make money on the asset, although that's a play, maybe to break even as you think about replacing that vehicle with something else. And it's planning that whole process.
Wow. So, I think for most of our listeners, and maybe I have a poor stereotype here, but I think a lot of them might consider what has the best financing and what is the best brand. Like, is it a F-150 or F-250? And is it going to get me to the next job? And like, that's really all of it. But you've really gone a little bit deeper here. The life cycle of it, I don't even know if that's considered that much.
That is one of my main questions. You've answered about 5 of them.
Yeah.
I've already picked up things I've never thought of. First, that vehicles are not necessarily over the road. Second, that fleet management will help spec out the proper vehicle, whether it's over the road or not. 3, the care and maintenance. That's what I think of as fleet management, is scheduling that.
Uh-huh.
And of course, the human assets or the human capital that's involved in it. Lots of questions about that.
Oh, yeah.
And then marketing when it's done. So you just expanded my understanding to 4 from 1. So
Excellent.
yeah, I never thought about that.
And I mean, something we haven't talked about is, when you buy an asset, it might be fit for how it needs to be driven and where it needs to go. But think about a lot of assets for companies are mobile workshops of some sort, right? So they need upfitting and branding, before it even makes it out to the actual end user, which is whatever part of the operation that's going to receive that asset and put it into use for productivity, production, profit. So, upfitting is a big part of it too. So there's lots of nuances of fleet management, which I think makes it so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to sit in this selection process a little bit longer. And what are some of the mistakes you see a lot of people coming in? Like, I'm imagining you've worked with people that come to you with a existing fleet that they've already selected, what are the things that they miss on the selection process, and what are those mistakes?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost is, what are we thinking about what's going to be done with the asset and really using data to identify the best vehicle for the job. And I think that the lack of that data or lack of use of that data puts you at a disadvantage, right? I think using all the data that you can, such as like how many miles are we going to be driving every day? What terrain are we going to be operating in? What's the weather in our territory or region, and think about not just do I need this truck, but in this region, I need that truck to have all wheel drive. And in this region, I need XYZ. So it's really thinking more holistically about the where, the how that the vehicle is going to be operated, and making sure that all those things are considered in the selection process, and using data that you already have about vehicles that you already have to continue to evolve in the selection process. What you have today might not be what you need tomorrow. And then
Mm.
just add in CARB regulations in California, or add in DOT regulations because you've added weight to the vehicles because now you've gone to over 10,001 pounds. So there's all these things about the selection process that you have to think about so that you don't make those common mistakes of you purchased a vehicle that can't handle the payload. Or maybe you've purchased a vehicle that you really need to run 36 or 48 months, but the use that you're going to put on it is going to minimize that life. And so, hey, maybe you want to look at a different asset that can run longer. It just depends on what your end goal is, whether it's financial, whether it's got to be a combination of goals, but you got to think
Yeah.
about what you're after and start there.
Where can a small contractor, small to middle contractor, get the ability to do that? In other words, do you have resources that points to consider? And I mean, that's a sophisticated, subtle, some are subtle, but sophisticated list of items that you gave,
Mhm.
and makes total sense. I'm not sure I'd be capable to make all those judgments. Well, I'm certain I couldn't, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a couple different approaches. I think in the fleet industry, there's a lot of great resources. When I don't think I've ever interviewed a fleet manager that said, "Oh, I set out to be a fleet manager." I knew that. I grew when I was growing up. I wanted. There was no such thing. There sort of still isn't, right? You get in your organization and somehow you fall into that role. That's what happened to me. So, it's you've got to dig in and learn, just like with any role. The fleet industry offers an amazing amount of networking, educational opportunities, and there are a lot of partners. I hate the word vendor. That's a bad word for me because that's just somebody who's it's just an exchange. But a partnership, there's a lot of great fleet partners in the industry who can help bring people up in fleet, educate them on all the nuances of fleet management, not just the selection process. But as far as selection goes, there's some great models out there that can be used. OEMs can help. Although I've sat
What's an
on,
OEM?
um, sorry, an original equipment manufacturer,
yeah,
such as
they're
Okay.
trying to,
Ford or
yeah,
GM or Subaru or name one. Sorry, I will try not to use all my fleet acronyms today.
No, it's good. I
Um,
like it.
but there's help from the people who manufacture the assets, and then there's help from people who um, manage them. So think about fleet management companies that are out there that used to just lease vehicles. Now they help with renewing registrations and working on national toll programs for vehicles that are going to run through tolls on a daily basis. They help with licensing and titling and all the things. So they help with DOT regulations and CARB regulations. So these fleet management companies out there, similar to IntelliShift, and we're just a little different from that, but they can help fleet managers, new or old, experienced or not, develop all sorts of models, ROI models for new technology, but especially models that are centered around picking the right vehicle, selecting the right vehicle for your fleet, for sure.
So
most of that is software, or that's actually a combination of software and meeting the right people and networking with the
All of the
right
above.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are
People
there
and
some
process and
resources?
software. Yeah.
But there's some resources too that people listening could go and look at for free and kind of begin the process of getting educated.
Absolutely. And so one thing that I get to do, which is so fun, is I am a free consultant for our prospects and our customers at
Okay.
IntelliShift. So I get to just do all this kind of fun stuff, help them find the right resources, maybe partner with the right people, right policy. I'm doing a slew of things right now, which is really fun, all centered around safety, sustainability, and efficiency for their fleets. So there's, again, I'm just one of a many, many resources, but again, there are associations in the fleet industry that help fleet managers grow and evolve in their careers. NAFA being one, AFLA being another. There are many out there, and in every industry, I think there's some educational arm by way of an association or more that people can get involved in to grow and learn.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned earlier was safety and that being like a big pillar of fleet management. Let's dive into safety and understand what that encompasses and even what can go wrong and what you want to try to avoid in terms of safety.
Yeah, so just a high level overview. I think um, safety for fleets is keeping protecting your driver first and foremost, and that happens in a lot of different ways. Even specking the vehicle is a part of a driver protection plan, right? So it's
Yeah.
protecting the driver and it's caring for the asset so the asset can optimally operate, not putting the driver in harm's way by way of um, unplanned breakdowns or blowing a tire going 65 miles an hour down the highway. So safety isn't just about driver behavior behind the wheel. That's huge, but it's about protecting the driver from all the other people driving beside them. So
Mhm.
one thing I think about, which is I think a unique perspective, is I think there's a lot of companies out there that would consider themselves really, really safe. Think utility, electric, construction. You go on their
Yeah.
websites and they just scream safety.
Sure.
Road construction's a huge one. Um, and they're not bringing that safety to the most dangerous work site or work zone that their people will ever be in, which is the roadways.
Yeah.
But they just don't think of it that
Right.
way, you know? Right? So
Mhm.
that's when I think about safety for fleets, it's really thinking, just flipping the script a little bit and thinking about the vehicle as a tool, which is like the most dangerous tool you'll ever issue, one. And then the roadways as just another work site or work zone that you have to be familiar with. You have to understand the roadways and what happens on them. And then you can equip the driver and the vehicle with the proper vehicle onboard equipment, tools, technology, et cetera, to put everybody in a great position to get home safe every day.
Yeah. I think for a lot of our listeners, the asset or the vehicle seems like the more predictable part of it. Like, does it have the oil changed? Are the tires aired up? Like, you can kind of control those. It's the employees and the drivers that seem a little bit more unpredictable. Can you control their behaviors? I know that you've got distracted drivers, you've got substance abuse potentially happening as well. How do you monitor those things in your fleet? How do you control for those things? What are best practices around there that might be able to help people?
Sure. I mean, and then fatigue too is another big one.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fatigue's a huge one.
That's just huge, and that's like a drug, right? It's your
Yeah,
body reacts to fatigue as if you're intoxicated in some way, right? So
yeah,
when I think about um, some of those hazards, I mean, and ways to kind of solve for them, onboard technology is probably the most surefire way. Um, but I would start with there's sort of a process in my mind is I think set the driver and vehicle up for being fit every day. So, think about how our bodies work and how they respond when we care for them, right? So, I think about in the morning a driver getting up, thinking about, hey, do I feel good today? Did I get enough sleep? Am I really fit to drive this vehicle? However many miles today and do the work that I'm going to do inside or outside in the heat or whatever the case may be. Let me prepare myself for this work day. And then organizations can do a lot of training and coaching around that. They don't enough,
mm,
but I'm hoping that we can all help spread the word, and that can be more of a topic, mental, physical health for the day. And then the vehicle,
Yeah.
them inspecting the asset to make sure the asset can run optimally today. So those are your first sort of safety nets. I feel good. My vehicle's going to work for me today because I've inspected it. And I've
Yeah.
done it in a way that the data from the inspection can flow somewhere to alert someone of things that would make me stop and pause that maybe I shouldn't drive this particular asset today.
Yeah.
Maybe we give that driver another one. But then think about um, the next thing is the driver's trained to drive the particular asset they're going to drive and they know what to do. And then you have technology like telematics and AI video dash cams on board to
What is
help.
telematics?
So telematics is an onboard device that will monitor a few things. It takes data from the the ECM, there's another acronym, sorry, that basically takes engine data, right?
Okay.
And can um, talk about what's going on with the vehicle,
Okay.
all kinds of
Just the computer in the car.
right, right. And,
Yeah.
and when you add a device, when you add an onboard telematics device, it can do some additional things. Um, and then there's data that can flow from that. And that data can also look at things like G-force, hard braking, rapid acceleration, harsh cornering, seatbelt use.
Mm.
And then the camera can collect other data like what's happening outwardly, like ADAS is advanced driver assistance systems, and a lot of vehicles come equipped with that today
Mm.
already. And adding on a camera is just another layer of protection about what's happening outside the cab. It can be used for exoneration and a number of things. And then
Sure.
inward facing cameras would then detect things like phone use, texting, fatigue, looking away, just total distraction. So
Yeah.
aggression and distraction can be detected in this way. So again, more things you can do to protect the driver as they go about their day.
Can you put in like on some I forget the term already, ECM, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Electronic control
Yeah, can you control
module.
the speed? Like stop, like can't go above 80 or something like
Sure.
that?
You can
Yeah.
govern speed on vehicles, but more so you can just report on it. So maybe you have some
Yeah.
thresholds you'd like to keep. So I see a lot of fleets doing things like they're not going to allow their driver to go more than 7 miles an hour of the speed limit. And
Mm.
while they may not govern that, they'll get an alert or a report for the times when the drivers do exceed that threshold that they've set.
Right.
Also, excessive speeding is a big hit. I see a lot of fleets monitoring when drivers are going plus 80, right? So they just want to know about those instances because if a driver gets in an accident when they're going that fast, it's sure to be
Fatal.
catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
Or fatal, right?
Yeah. Man, okay. So
Lots to think about.
yeah, for sure. And so whenever you're doing your fleet management, is it also are you kind of also including the drivers in that? So for example, I think whenever I think of fleet management, not only the maintenance on the vehicle, but you're also thinking about the insurance, the registration, all that stuff. What about like your driver's licenses for the drivers, all that? Is that included in the fleet management or is that a different HR process?
It's both. A lot of
Okay.
times what we see, and what I've done in my past is flowing data from some sort of a HR system into um, when I think of like maximizing efficiency, I think of my data in one place, which makes a lot of sense. But then you can
Yeah.
take people data and combine it with vehicle data so we know when um, certain certifications need renewed for drivers, when
Yeah.
drivers have something show up on their MVR that would be unfavorable, right, for you as an
Motor
organization.
vehicle report?
Yes. So the motor
Okay.
vehicle record is something that
Okay.
um, someone would run on you if they pull you over. They're going to run
Mhm.
your MVR, right? And they're going to know if you, Cleo, have like lots of speeding infractions in the past, and
Yeah.
maybe you're going to have enough points on your license where they're going to yank your license, right? Where you have to go to
Yeah.
court or something crazy. So monitoring drivers' motor vehicle records, as well as using this data to make sure that they keep certifications up to date, is just one way that you can make sure that drivers are sort of legal on the
Yeah.
road, right? That's just
Mm.
a very minimal step, but required,
But that is under the purview of fleet management
It is.
is the driver.
It is.
What about routing? Is
Yeah,
routing
now this is the
considered a
efficiency side
part
of
of
it, right?
yeah.
Man, I love this topic, but I'll try to keep it brief. Routing is a lot of times an operational function for an organization. And a lot of times they're not partnering enough with fleet. So I think the best combination is when fleet and routing data come together and
Mm.
we can learn from what's happening with the asset and where it is right now. So looking at that latitude, longitude things that GPS data that you get from the telematics device that says, here's where this driver is right now. So it helps organizations combine that data with vehicle health data, traffic, weather, and then routing, and bringing those things together to make sure you can optimally operate every day is just super fun stuff. And that's possible today.
Interesting. So, like, how does that can you give us some examples of how that would actually play out and how it would make a difference for a, going job site to job site? I'm thinking of maybe like a service contractor that's a plumber going from house to house. Um, how does this routing make a big difference for that individual?
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great example because mobile service is
Yeah.
something we're all accustomed to, especially if we own anything that ever needs
Right.
service, right? Somebody's going to come out to our home or place of business to do that. And so when I think about the plumber, for example, who's going residence to residence, planning his day so that he can get to maybe as many jobs as it's safe and profitable for him to do works for him because that's how he gets paid, or the organization because that's profit for them. So being able to plan out or route everyone's day ahead of time. And then the other big component is making sure that we minimize the number of miles that need to be driven to make those stops every day, right? So we can keep the mileage low, our carbon footprint low, we can keep our costs down and still get to all of our customers and safely and efficiently throughout the day. And then someone cancels. And so then you can quickly reroute a driver to make sure that they don't go way out of the way to get to that next job. And you can also insert jobs in their day. So you have 2
Yeah.
cancellations, they had 6 stops. You can get, okay, here's 2 more jobs, and then you can reroute them to make sure you don't lose time or drive too many miles to get to those specific customers. And it increases your chances of getting to customers on time. And then you can do fun things like send customers a text and say, "Hey, I'm on my way," automatically. So drivers
Yeah.
don't have to interact with their phone. Customers know they're coming, all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all software driven. I used to do that 40 years ago
Oh.
before computers, literally, and it was just really, I mean, you could get better at it, but boy, it was, and somebody cancels on you and it just ruins your day,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember routing before it was efficient, and I look, forward to now and then even into the future with AI and all kinds of other fun things that are coming into play that, it's just gonna get easier and better and more efficient,
Yeah.
More efficient.
right?
Yeah.
What's the
Let me, oh, go
what's
ahead.
the is it FedEx or UPS that only make right turns? So they avoid left turns?
Mhm. Yeah, they reduce
Yeah.
accidents that way, you know?
Oh, wow.
And that's true,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I'd heard it, but
Yeah. One thing I'm also interested on for contractors is combining inventory with fleet. So knowing what equipment and materials we have on our fleet at any given time, is that because going from the job site, oh, we don't have it, we got to go back to the shop, and then we got to come back to the job site. So is that something that's incorporated into some of these fleet management services where you can see some of that inventory?
Yeah, it kinda depends on how you wanna approach it. Now, from my standpoint, um, I wouldn't dream of in today's day and age, but you can't imagine how many people don't do this yet. But
Yeah.
most people don't. Most fleets, most organizations. However, if it were me and it was my fleet today, I would certainly be tying materials, tools, and whether it's an RFID tag on everything so that
Yeah.
we know exactly what's in the assets. And when materials move about, in and out, they have use and then or when something happens to them or when they're lost, things like that. So in my mind, combining the routing, the driver behavior, the tools and materials together in one sort of place would be optimal. Again, not super easy, but it's happening. And
Yeah.
organizations that are running uber efficiently are doing those things today. And even
Yeah.
smaller businesses that, run pickups that already have some onboard technology like that, workforce management type of stuff that are actually offered
Mm.
by companies like Ford and GM, for example. Um,
Mm.
we're starting to see that in the smaller fleets, but then in the larger fleets too, just how do we wrap our heads around what's going in the asset every day, how it's being used, what's being disposed of, et cetera. Just so you can kind of get a handle on your routing, your productivity, your asset management, your materials management, and tools. Just keeping it all together. But it's possible, and it's happening today, and it's just going to get better as we move into the future.
Wow, that's great. Another question that probably matters a lot for our audience: should you let employees take vehicles home?
You
What's your
know,
opinion?
uh, from an opinion standpoint, I mean, I think it's all about your individual business. So if I'm a plumber or I'm a
Yeah.
contractor of some sort, and I have my technicians or professionals out there doing that vocational work all day, if they start from home or they start at a hub where they're going to get materials that they need for the day, sometimes it might make sense to route them in a way that you route their last job closest to their residence or closest to the hub. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. If it makes the most sense, that they wouldn't have to come back to the hub every day or the warehouse, then route them home, right? And then they can turn around and start their day from home. You can reduce mileage. There's a lot of great benefits to that. But then there's also things that you need to manage and monitor, like after hours or unauthorized use, which drives up miles, reduces vehicle life, increases cost and risk. So it's a play. Some organizations have a combination. They're a hybrid of some take home, some come back to the shop every day. Some guys that are
Mm.
living in a metro area, they're all coming back to the shop. Some guys that are in rural locations are taking their vehicles home. So I think it's about what works best for the organization, but then having those controls in place to make sure you can manage whatever scenario that you pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing too is just signed up a guy this last week, and I think he's got 29 trucks. Uh, and he said he has an average of $9,000 worth of parts on each truck. So they go sit parked in somebody's driveway somewhere. Anyway, there's a lot to it, and we did hoping to get a solid answer, but the answer is it depends, right?
It does.
I'm
Yeah, it does depend. And I think it's all about, you know, safety and productivity and profitability and efficiency. You've got to consider all these things. And it's not just a one size fits all. Um, I think even inside of a fleet, you have to think about your sales fleet operates this way, your operations leader assets operate another way. You've got technicians out there, you've got delivery vehicles. I ran a very large mixed fleet for a very long time. And so you think about 10,000 assets out on the road. Part of those were people in sedans that were making sales calls. Um,
sales calls. Yeah.
Yeah.
right, pretty simple profile. And then another profile is 8,000-ish commercial cargo vans loaded with tools and equipment and branded, doing another sort of job. And so I treated each sort of profile of my former fleet differently, and that way I could benchmark the sales fleet against other sales fleet, the
Mm.
the van fleet against other van fleets, the truck fleet that was delivering materials, they were box trucks of different sizes. Benchmark those against other box truck fleets. So it allowed me to kind of operate a lot of fleets instead of my big fleet, but then use different KPIs and data and measurement and reports for each one because they're all different, right?
Yeah. Well, let's do a little bit of a scenario here. Let's say I'm a listener for this episode. You've piqued my interest. I need to be a little bit more serious about my fleet management, currently I've got three company vehicles that, project manager takes out, I take out, and a technician takes out. I have just purchased those vehicles, just regular financing, whatever it is. Where do I start? What's like step number one for getting into taking fleet management serious for me?
I think it's visibility, right? So
Okay.
just thinking about what visibility you have into what you just purchased. You have these expensive assets, they're going to be productive and they're designed to go out and make you money, right? So
Yeah.
what visibility do I have? Where are they? What are they doing? And then how do I know that the people that I've hired to operate those assets are treating those assets like their own? Well, we shouldn't say like their own because some people don't treat their assets very nicely. Can you imagine
Yeah.
that? But, we're all car people here. So I'm telling you that that's a really bad idea, but it happens.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think just do we know how those operators are treating the vehicles and themselves? And so I think visibility is the first thing. Do I want visibility? How do I get visibility? What can the vehicles tell me? And then do I have to add something on board to get visibility? I think visibility equals data. Data equals managing what you can monitor, right? You can't
Yeah.
manage something if you don't monitor it, right? So I think that's a very easy, inexpensive first step in managing a small fleet or any fleet is getting visibility to your assets, how they're operating and how someone's operating them.
So what would you do in terms of visibility? Would you start with that onboard technology?
Mhm.
Is that like the best? Okay. And so what options are out there for that onboard technology?
Too many. Um,
Too many.
How
no,
to decide.
there's a lot of options, but they could find a telematics solution. They could do a plug and play into the OBD2 port, or they could put it in with the Y harnesses, which I would totally suggest, right? So that when they take those vehicles in for service, that the service technician never has to unplug the telematics device to do what
Ah,
he or she needs to do in the shop, to do diagnostics and repairs for the vehicle. So, get a device into the vehicle and then have that data feed back to you. The tricky part is it's start with limiting the data that you don't want to get overwhelmed and be data heavy and be confused and not know what you're looking at. Maybe just start with dots on a map, right? Where are they?
yeah.
And then you
That's
could
really.
dig into some other things. Yeah.
I have to tell you a story real quickly. About 8 years ago, I had a client who did right of way clearing. So his crews did not work within 20 miles of his office. We put GPS in the trucks, and unbeknownst to anybody, he did that over when nobody was around. So we could watch everybody without their knowing it. Well, I was at his office on a misty, icy day, and we were looking at one of his crew leaders who had a truck about 40 miles away, parked in his driveway the whole day, parked in his driveway. And anyway, about 3 in the afternoon, that truck backed out and drove down to the town where I was sitting with the owner and turned in 10 hours of work for 4 guys for the day.
Oh
There you
man.
go.
Now, my guy did not fire him. I said, "This, are you kidding me?" He goes, "No, it wasn't fair. I didn't tell him I was watching." I'm going, anyway, he was
How many
stole
times has that
money.
happened before?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
anyway, that's not the point to catch people,
Right.
but it is a point to understand, right? I mean, we're not
It is.
just
It's to
thinking,
understand, and I think the best approach there, um, is I'm glad he didn't fire him, right? Because he didn't he didn't talk to him, he didn't educate him, he didn't
just
train him, right? So there's that idea of like, if you're gonna do stuff like this, get your drivers involved super early and
Yeah.
talk to them about what you wanna do and what you wanna accomplish, and ultimately, you wanna keep them safe and start to use that language that I talked about at the beginning of our discussion and
Yeah.
help them understand what you're trying to do for them and with them, and get their partnership right out of the gate, I think is a great approach
yeah,
when you're gonna start that
Okay.
yeah,
visibility approach.
Okay. So we got three vehicles, we got visibility. Eventually we can get into some efficiency things, looking at routes. We can manage our assets better. We can think about when we add our fourth, making the right selection, going through the
Mhm.
right process. Let's go to that example of that Martin gave of client of his that has 29 vehicles. At what point, at 29 vehicles on the road, surely you've already done some sort of fleet management at that point. I would at least hope, and you're not just on a whim. But what is kind of that next level when you do have 29 assets that are out there on the road, and there's probably other assets that are maybe in the shop, like forklifts, things like that. But what is that step that you take? You've got some fleet manager in place. Do you hire a dedicated person at that point for fleet management? When does that come? Where would you kind of hope that a 29 vehicle operation would be with fleet management?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a lot of customers that are from 2 vehicles to 10,000 in our
Hmm.
portfolio. And our small fleets, we find that they don't have a dedicated fleet manager. They probably have an office manager, okay,
Yeah.
who is doing a lot of things, wearing a lot of hats. So if you think about um, how do you how do you help that person do all the things they need to do, wear all the hats they need to wear? Again, if you get some onboard technology that's going to help streamline those processes, then Joe, who sits in the office every day and manages every bloody thing, doesn't feel overwhelmed. Maybe they're doing paper inspections of the vehicles. Maybe they're doing no inspections. But I would start with, again, if they're not even ready to move on the visibility thing, like, hey man, I'm not ready to put telematics in the vehicles. That's okay. Have a route plan for your drivers, have them report on it. Use a routing booklet, use a paper inspection form. Yeah, that's terrible and hard and a cumbersome thing, but that's a place to start. Now, I would venture to guess if somebody has 29 vehicles, then they're looking at and then they're looking at that capital investment and they're like, I need to do more. And that's when I'd say, hey, business owner, maybe you don't have a dedicated fleet manager, but you have a management type of system, some way to
Yeah.
track where they are, maybe route them, you know, and then maybe have something in place that can tell you when like oil, lube, filter, tire, brake need done, right? Outside of the inspection process. So the vehicle can tell you certain things, like when it needs certain things. So having those baseline things in place would be pretty critical for someone who has a small fleet like 29 vehicles. That's a big investment. Do that math,
Yeah.
right? And then, I think we don't want to think that our employees are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but we heard Martin's example. So maybe it's, thinking about taking the right approach from a communication standpoint, but then assuming that there are going to be people that are going to do things like turn in time that wasn't done, say I worked when I didn't, stole fuel. That's a big, big problem. Fuel prices are high, they're volatile, and the economy is in a place where people are having a hard time buying their groceries. So if they're sitting on that fence, maybe they're going to pump 10 gallons into their own car with the fuel card that you've given them to fuel that one of those 29 assets. So it's important to put those controls in place to set the stage for, hey, listen, this is how we do work. This is how we do business. This is the way we work. And letting
Right.
people know that you're monitoring those things, then they just won't do it if they know you're watching. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just enough to put that device in the vehicle and start the monitoring process, looking at fuel behavior. And then I think if I own 29 vehicles, I'm already not sleeping at night, worried about one of my drivers getting in an accident.
Yeah.
That's my biggest worry. I had exponentially more than that. And I can tell you that there were a lot of times when I know that what I didn't know would hurt me. And it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And it did. And so I think
Yeah.
that all fleet owners, small or large, should be thinking about what I don't know will hurt me. So how do you
Yeah.
know? You find out. You put something in the vehicle to give you information and data. And then you can figure out what you want to do with that as you go along.
That's
Yes.
Right.
that really is a brilliant first step. And just to kind of, because not everybody knows, um, what can you expect to pay to put GPS in a truck and have minimal, or beginning uh, reporting data?
It,
I mean, is that
it,
$100 a truck, $500 a truck?
Well, it's like an airtime fee, right? So you pay for a cell phone service,
Okay.
bundle it in with that. Maybe if you have 29 vehicles, you need 29 devices, devices can run anywhere from, 15 to $40. It's not the device that is expensive. That's a one-time capital sort of
Right.
outlay. If you want to manage it that way, if you have a lot of vehicles, you might fold it into the
Yeah.
lease, whatever. There's lots of creative ways to pay for this stuff. But if you're just going to
Yeah.
outright buy 29 devices, then you're going to pay that airtime fee like your cell phone every month. And that can range too. So if you're paying $20 a month, and you take what you paid for the capital expense for the device, and then you take the monthly fee times 29 vehicles times 12 months, and you avoid one accident, you've already paid
Oh,
for
yeah.
it for the next
Easy.
5 years, right? That's the
Yeah,
way
easily.
that's the way you gotta kinda
Which,
think about it, and not just an accident, but from an efficiency standpoint. Maybe you
Yeah.
avoided a major
we had
mechanical.
5 more jobs. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. You got to more customers because you didn't have unplanned breakdowns. You
We
were able to maintain the vehicle and avoid an engine blow because someone didn't tell you
Right.
that the bloody engine light was on for, 5 weeks. So it just puts some control into your hands that
Yeah.
literally it would pay for itself. It pays for itself over and over again.
I
You men
wanted to ask this when we were passing through it real quickly, but we are talking about expense on our side with uh, avoidance. We'll never know that we avoided that fatal accident.
Well,
That
we might.
particular fatal.
We might.
Well,
And
we
technology might
yeah.
tell us we avoided it.
Oh,
Sure.
that would be
Yeah, yeah.
cool. But
Yeah.
right up front, are there insurance company adjustments, concessions? If you put this technology in, they actually help you pay for it by reducing your rate. I
I
mean, is that pretty
love this
common?
question because we have seen a lot of this in the last few years, most of it because of the onset of and continual growth and increases in distracted driving accidents. I mean, we have
Yeah.
the best
Yeah,
technology,
good.
and accidents are still happening because people are just doing everything but driving. So insurance companies are coming to our customers, for example, and they're saying, "We're not going to renew you, or we're going to renew you at a higher cost, but we can't afford to insure you because you're having too many accidents." And then they're asking or demanding, in order to stay, in a relationship, that fleet do something differently. Likely, if they already have telematics,
Yeah.
then they're asking them, "Well, you need to get cameras." So it's coming. Um,
Yeah.
that it's not about if, really, it's about when on AI video dash cams.
Wow.
And me, for my clarity, telematics is more than GPS. Telematics is
Mm,
GPS plus some ECM type information.
absolutely, it's a
Yeah,
well.
I mean,
It's
it's more.
it's great.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. That's a great place to start. You just start looking and realize. Anyway, okay,
Yeah.
Khalil. Sorry.
No, this is good. So I think there's so many different takeaways that we have from this. I think one of the biggest things that I think will make a huge difference for some of our listeners is the selection process and thinking of it as a long-term investment and not just what can I get the financing on today that will allow me to get the job done. And while that matters, there's a lot of factors to consider. And I love that. Then I think the next thing is that visibility of getting something on board so that you can have visibility is not a huge lift for a lot of our audience. Even if it's, they are doing zero investment currently in fleet management, they can have, if they take that long-term approach and pay for the telematics on board and some sort of software that can help them navigate all the data there, then they can really save a lot of money. We outlined what those were. It can be potentially insurance. It can be from route optimization, saving mileage and gas. It can be from, you know, stealing, essentially theft of either gas and knowing if they're using the company card for their own personal use, or even the theft of just time not really on the job because you can
Or
see that they're
asset theft.
just,
Somebody took
yeah, or
your
asset
vehicle to
theft as
find
well,
it.
Yeah.
obviously, correct. Yeah. So there's so many like cost savings that you're preventing and you're seeing in real time with insurance costs by just having those things on board. So it totally makes sense that if you are not doing fleet management at any level right now, you definitely need to get into it and you need to take it a little bit more serious. I want to hear a little bit about IntelliShift and maybe how IntelliShift helps with some of this. So
Who is IntelliShift?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So who are we? When I think about, when people say, "Hey, what do you guys do?" We're fleet intelligence, right?
okay,
Our tagline is fleet intelligence made simple. But what's fleet intelligence? It's just really powerful data that's gathered from, and we've talked about a lot of this today. So you're bringing it in from telematics, from dash cams, from vehicle inspections, from maintenance, for people. You're bringing data into one place so you can have a powerful, tool that brings about insights that you can see every day to help you manage your fleet, from what happened yesterday, what's happening now in real time, and then what can happen in the future. So being more proactive and predictive in nature as you really dig into your fleet management. So we're helping our customers um, eliminate accidents. We really are. But then by way of that, we're also helping them really drive efficiency
Right.
and cost reductions in their fleets through, again, just bringing powerful data and making it super easy to use.
Yeah. And so I'm
Yeah.
assuming all the things that we've not necessarily every single thing, but a lot of the things that we've talked about today, IntelliShift helps with, from the selection to the visibility to the safety and the efficiency aspects that we've covered. IntelliShift is a really great resource for that.
We are. So where we come into the process is, we have our proprietary hardware, which is telematics and AI video dash cameras, proprietary software that I talked about that kind of brings all this amazing data. We bring data from manufacturers, we bring data from the fuel card people, we bring data from inside organizations like FMS, fleet management systems, ERP, all these systems, and we bring this data together to help, tell this story every day and then into the future. Now, we don't do things like vehicle registration renewal and tag renewal. We don't manage someone's national tool program, but we help them with DVIRs and all the DOT, the Department of Transportation regulated things. We help out with all those things. So when I think of what a lot of our customers do is they use us as their big data analytics partner, right?
Yeah.
And they feed us data from some of those other places. We can bring a lot of that data in ourselves, but those other auxiliary, I call them auxiliary service things like tolls and registration renewals. Um, we do have a lot of great partners that we recommend and work with to help bring that whole fleet management picture to life for
Mm.
for our customers and our.
Kind of like running plugins for the different areas.
Yeah, and you think about.
Integrations.
Software plugins.
Right, right. And we have an open API, so it just allows us to bring awesome data. And
Yeah.
you think powered assets, non-powered assets. We work with refrigerated units, so we don't just have this onboard device that we talked about, this telematics device. We have some other devices that we use to help manage different types of assets. Again, like trailers that are just sitting in a yard and they want to know
Yeah.
movement. We do a lot of geofencing to help people understand when vehicles are moving in and out of work sites and work zones, especially in construction and
Mhm.
contractors and field service. So we
Yeah.
do a lot of different things. We don't do everything, but again, we have some great partnerships that help round out the whole fleet management experience for our customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So how can, I'm ready to get serious about fleet management. How can I get started with IntelliShift?
Yeah, I mean, just link into IntelliShift.com. There's a great short video on our website that I love that kind of
Mhm.
shows people in about 40 seconds like what we do and how we do it. And it's great. I love our creative team. They're so awesome. So, you know, go on our website, book a demo. I mean, just find out what you don't know. And maybe you just learn from us on, what's possible. And maybe you just want to wrap your head around what's possible, but you're not ready to move yet. That's okay. Link in with me. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Link into my podcast. It's a ton of free information like we've talked about today. I have a podcast on every individual aspect of what we've talked about today. I
Wow.
just
And
shot.
what's your podcast called?
It's called The
What's
Straight
the name?
Talk on Fleet. I don't even
Okay.
know how to do anything any other way, but um,
Straight talk on fleet.
straight talk on everything. And I talk about leadership and change management and like driving safety culture. So, like the bigger picture stuff that seems daunting for people, I break it down pretty simply. And I always have cool guests on too to help, just with this thought leadership around, wow, how do I like run a safe and efficient fleet? How do I do that? So I'm
Yeah.
always happy to help people and share my knowledge and experiences. with people as well. So yeah, link in with me, link in with IntelliShift, and we're happy to help you just start wrapping your head around how to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn, to your podcast, as well as the IntelliShift website where they can book a demo. But
Cool.
yeah, I've learned a lot today. I know Martin has as well.
Yeah.
Hope our audience has enjoyed this. Thank you for joining us, Erin. It's great to have you.
So much fun. Great talking to you guys. Before we hit record too, would love to spend more time talking. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cash Flow Contractor. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Visit thecashflowcontractor.com. See you next episode.